Welcome to City Church's On Demand Messages. My name is Josh, and we're so glad that you're tuning in whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. In fact, it's possible that you either stumbled across us online or somebody shared this and you are leading in maybe for the first time. If you have any questions or want to know more about who we are, we'd love for you to visit our website. In fact, if you can even plan your first visit on our website. If you've got kids, we have a kids ministry specifically for them. You can plan your visit. You can go ahead and check them in, learn more about what that will be like. Maybe a middle or high school student, we've got you covered. And so if you have any questions or anything that we can do for you, please just check out our website. Today's message is going to be very special, and we're thankful that you're tuning in. It'll be anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes. And so if we can do anything for you, please let us know. But enjoy today's message.
Church, can you just give a warm welcome to John Peacock?
Love you. City Church, it is a joy, it is an honor to be with you. My name is John. I have Georgia roots, so my whole family's from Dodge County, which is about an hour and a half south of here, Eastman, Georgia. That's where they're all from. And then a bunch of them now live in Gainesville, Georgia, so North Georgia. And so I have some Georgia roots, and it's always good to come back to Georgia and feel like I'm around my grandmother's table. Last night, I was blessed by God tremendously by Buckner's The Sweet Tea, and I could go on, but I'll get emotional in front of you talking about what I ate last night. But it is a joy to be here, and here to stay. Everyone say that with me. Here to stay. Yeah, here to stay. I'm not, but you are. I'm just visiting, all right? I'm about to fly back home to wonderful Chicago, but you're here to stay. I wish I was here to stay. I wish I could be here in the fall and cheer on the Georgia Bulldogs with you. Instead, God has placed me in an area where our hearts get broken every fall by the Chicago Bears. It's hard. It's a hard place to live, yet that's where God has called me. Here to stay is this vision that God has given this church. It's this teaching series, certainly, that we're in right now. Here to stay, and I just want you to know that you are blessed to be part of this church. You are, and I know a lot of leaders. I know a lot of church planters, and Josh and Lauren are gifted by God, and they're called by God. Would you agree with me? And they are incredible. They are amazing, and the team that's assembled here with Warren and just so many others, I got to meet them last year. This is not normal. I've been around a lot of church plants. This City Church is not normal. Most of you probably don't know a ton about church planting, which would make you normal. It's kind of weird to know a lot about church planting, but this is not normal. You're in the middle of a miracle. Church plants don't make it. Like 86% fail. And this church is not only making it, it's growing. Almost 800 people were here for Easter weekend. Like, this is not normal. You're in the middle of a miracle, and some of you are like, man, I don't know. I was just coming to get a workout in. Well, that's 2 doors down. You're in a church, and this is called City Church. And God is at work here. No matter who you are, no matter what you believe, no matter what you did last year or last night, you're in the right place, and I just want you to know, this place is not normal. This is a work of God. God is on the move, and He is inviting this church to not pull up short. He's inviting this church to not settle. He's inviting this church to keep believing Him that you would fully maximize your redemptive potential. God is at work here, and it's a joy for me to step in this weekend to fill the pulpit, to preach, and I'm excited to talk about here to stay. Here to stay, and what Josh asked me to preach on today is what here to stay people believe. Here to stay people believe that I am here for a reason. I'm here for a reason. Here to stay people, this is what we believe. That I'm here for a reason. And I want you to just think about that. I want you to consider this truth, that you are here for a reason. And the here can look like a lot of different things. The here can mean Griffin, Georgia, of course. You are here in Griffin, Georgia. Some of you live right in this community, or maybe you drove in from Jackson or other places. But you're in your place, your geographical place for a reason. Right? We are here. Here can mean that. Here can mean your family. You are in your family. Even if you got in a fight on the way to church this morning, that's why my wife and I, we drive separate to church, all right? That's just a little pro tip, all right? You're in your family for a reason. Your spouse. God placed you in her life. God placed you in His life for a reason. Your high school. You're in your high school for a reason. Your place of work. I don't know where you work. Maybe you work as a barista. Maybe you work at Chick-fil-A. And I just want you to know, if you do work for Chick-fil-A, you're really here for a reason. You serve Christian chicken. We praise God for that. Like we are here for a reason, no matter where we're at. This is what Here to Stay people believe. We believe that we are here for a reason. And here's what I also know. If you're anything like me, that belief gets attacked. I'm a pastor. I'm a church planter. I've been doing this for quite some time. And yet, even this week, I got to tell you guys, I struggled to believe that. I struggled to believe that God placed me in my family for a reason, that God placed me in my community for a reason. That belief for me, and maybe your week has been different than mine, but that belief for me has been under attack. And I want to read to you a story of a man that God used in extraordinary ways. He would experience that he was here for a reason, but that belief was under attack in so many different seasons of his life. We're going to see here in Exodus chapter 3, this man by the name of Moses. If you have a Bible with you, open up to Exodus chapter 3. If you don't have a Bible with you, we'll pull it up on the screen. And the story that I want to read to you today is such an encouraging story. It's a challenging story. It's an inspiring story, but it's an encouraging story. This is God's word to you. It says this: Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. Moses, he's a grown man at this time. We think he's around 40 years old, and he doesn't even own his own sheep yet. Some of you think he had it bad. Well, this is Moses. He's tending someone else's flock. His father-in-law owns the flock, and here's Moses. I mean, he's in Midian, and kind of the short story of that is it's away from everything. He's in Midian. He's tending sheep. He's on the far side of the wilderness, and he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Verse 2. There the angel of the Lord appeared to Moses in flames of fire within a bush. Moses saw that the bush, though it was on fire, it didn't burn up. You've heard of the burning bush story before. If you're new to church, you've never heard of this before, but it's an amazing story. This bush is on fire, and obviously it catches his attention. Verse 3, so Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight. Yeah, Moses, that'd probably be a good idea. Why the bush isn't burning up? Verse 4, when the Lord saw that he'd gone over to look, God called him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is on holy ground. Whenever God steps in and speaks a word to us, man, the ground is holy. And I'm hoping and praying that this moment, even today, would be holy ground for you, that God would speak into your life right now, that he would say something that you need to hear him say. Verse 6, he says, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Jacob, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. For over 400 years at this moment, the people of God, they were enslaved in Egypt. And God is saying, he's saying, listen, I've heard the cries. I've heard, I'm aware. Verse 8, he says, so I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians. This is what God is saying. In this moment, if you're anything like Moses, if you were a Hebrew person at this time, you'd been praying for generations for this moment, when God would step in. And yet for generations, it felt as though God had just kind of removed himself. And so they'd been longing, they'd been praying, they'd been hoping for this moment when God would say, I will step in, I will come down and rescue. And so Moses is getting fired up. He's like, oh man, we've been waiting on this. We've been waiting for God to do something about it. And this is what God is saying. He's like, all right, here's the moment. I'm about to come down and rescue them from the Egyptians, right? I'm going to bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Verse 9. And now the cry of the Israelites, they've reached me. I've seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. And Moses is so excited. Verse 10 says, so now, and then there's just kind of this blinking cursor moment. Or if you have a phone and if you've ever texted somebody, and you text them, and then they're responding back, but it hasn't hit your phone yet. You know the bubbles that just kind of appear on your phone? Now, just imagine the most important thing. You're waiting for that text to come back, and you see the bubbles, but nothing's appearing yet, and you're on the edge of your seat, and you're excited to see what the text is going to be. This is this moment because Moses is like, oh my gosh, God is finally going to do something. God is about to come down and throw haymakers. God is about to come down and do something. God is about to come down, and so Moses is excited. He's excited to hear how God is going to intervene, how God is going to come down himself and take care of business. This is what he's saying. And so Moses is so excited until God says how he's going to do it. Because here's what God says. So now, go. I am sending you. To which Moses is like, whoa, wait, what? Moses in this moment, he puts his phone down. Moses in this moment takes a step back. He's like, what do I have to do with your rescue mission? What does my life have to do with your mission? Moses is no longer excited when he hears this. God says, go, I am sending you. The John Peacock translation reads this way, Moses, you are here for a reason. Now go, I am sending you. I call this a verse 10 moment. And this is why Josh, and just this series is on his heart, that you would have a verse 10 moment, that you would understand that God has saved you to send you. He has saved your life, and he has rescued you through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ to send you. To send you to your school, to send you to your family, to send you to your workplace on Monday, because that's when church starts. It starts on Monday. Go, I am sending you. It's a verse 10 moment. It was a number of years ago when I had a verse 10 moment. I've had a lot of these, but I'll never forget this verse 10 moment. And a guy by the name of Michael, he sent me a message. He said, hey, let's get together. I'd love to go on a run. I want to share with you this dream that I have. I'm like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. So we went on a run, and we're running pretty slow, and we're just talking and having a good conversation. And he begins to tell me about what he's going to do. And he believes God has put on his heart to start something called Team World Vision. Now, of course, I've heard of World Vision. It's a worldwide organization, and he was wanting to start a new thing within Team World Vision where they would recruit people to run marathons. And so he's telling me about this as we're kind of slowly running, and he's just like, I just see it so clearly that I'm supposed to do this, and I'm going to just recruit people to run marathons, and as they run marathons, they're going to run it and raise money and awareness for clean water in Africa. He's like, this is like the number one thing that's happening in the world that is taking the lives of so many people, so many children. They don't have access to clean water. So he said, what if I just get all these people to run these marathons, and we could raise millions of dollars? This is what he's telling me. I'm like, man, that's exciting. And I'm like, I bet you could do that. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, we're here in Chicago, and it's one of the most famous, marathons in the entire world. And he's like, I just feel like I'm going to start here in Chicago. I'm like, you should. And he's like, I think I can probably get so many people to run. I'm like, I bet you can. And he's like, I bet, man, even just this first one, we could probably get like 100 people to run in. I bet we could raise maybe, 50 grand. I'm like, man, I'm going to pray for you guys. And he said, well, that's why I'm running with you. And this is what he said. He said, John, are you willing to give up what you want so that someone else can have what they need? And that's when I stopped running. And I'm just like, well, what does my life have to do with your dream? So you're asking me to run the Chicago Marathon. Now, I did play college baseball. That was a long time ago. And in baseball, you run like 90 feet at a time. I have Cedars of Lebanon. All right, I was just born with big legs. And I'm not shaped like a Kenyan. I'm like, you got the wrong guy, man. I jog, but I'm not a runner. He said, no, John, I just feel like you're supposed to help me get this thing started. I want you to run this Chicago Marathon. And I just got to tell you that in no way, shape, or form did I ever think that marathons would be part of my life, but God has a sense of humor. I said back to him that day a word that can change your life, and that word is yes. I said yes. And we've seen God do extraordinary things ever since that run. Millions and millions of dollars has been raised for clean water in Africa. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people have run marathons all over the country and other parts of the world for Team World Vision. It's been an incredible thing. It was a verse 10 moment for me. Some of you in this room, if you want to run the Chicago Marathon this October, you can follow up with me. Others of you are like, no, I actually don't want to do that at all. But some of you might. I'd love to get you involved. It was a verse 10 moment when I was starting to realize, listen, it matters. That I'm here in this moment, in my city for a reason. That God is inviting me to do something. That God is actually inviting me that I can use this one and only life for something that matters. I'm here for a reason. You're here for a reason in your family, with your spouse, your siblings, your neighbors. God says, I am sending you. Matthew West, I love his song called Do Something. It goes like this. I woke up this morning. I'll read it. I won't sing it. Saw a world full of trouble. Now, I thought, how did we ever get so far down? How's it ever going to turn around? How many of you, that's what you've been thinking, driving around, listening to talk radio or other things, you're just like, man, this world is just It's over. So I turned my eyes to heaven. I thought, God, why don't you do something? I just couldn't bear the thought of people living in poverty, children sold into slavery. The thought disgusted me. So I shook my fist at heaven. I said, God, why don't you do something? He said, I did. I created you. So according to God, He has saved you and He has sent you. You're here for a reason. You're here for a reason. I am here for a reason. What a truth. What a belief. And yet this is what we see from Moses' story. He really struggled to believe that he was here for a reason, for a couple reasons that I want to draw your attention to. The first reason that Moses struggled to believe that I'm here for a reason is because of what he did. For a number of you in the room right now, when I say, hey, you're here for a reason, you're like, probably the person next to me, but not me. John, you don't know me, and yeah, I'm in church right now, but bro, you don't know where I've been. You don't know the things I've done. Well, this was Moses. He said, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm here for a reason because of what I did. Moses had quite a past. It was before in his story, you can read about this, where in a moment of rage and trying to take on the justice of God himself and handle it, he killed a man in Egypt. Moses was a murderer. I don't know if you knew this. He murdered a guy. And he tried to cover up his sin because that's what we often do. He buried a guy and everything got found out. And this is why Moses was a man on the run. That's why he was in Midian, in the middle of nowhere, because he was in hiding. And Moses, I believe, if we would have said to him, hey, you're here for a reason, I think he'd have been like, maybe at one point in my life, but because of what I've done, I just don't think that God's going to do anything with my life. And yet, in this chapter, we see God show up to Moses. Check this out. He says, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Where was Moses' biggest mistake, biggest sin committed? Answer, Egypt. Isn't it interesting that God calls Moses to go back to the very epicenter, the very scene of the crime? How often when God wants to do something great in our life, he's going to bring us back to that place of our biggest regret. He wants to do a type of healing in your story. He wants to remind you that your past does not determine your future. Did you know that? That your past does not determine your future. And maybe others in the room have a past like mine. If you would have known me as a college athlete, you would have never dreamed in a million years I'd ever be standing on a stage talking about Jesus. And yet my past, it doesn't determine my future, neither does yours, neither did Moses. Amen. This is such good news. God calls him back to Egypt. If you start following Jesus for quite some time, if you begin to live this here-to-stay kind of vision, that your life truly matters, God has sovereignly placed you where you're at. When you start to see this, you will experience God use the worst parts of your story for some of the most incredible things. You will see God bring you back to the epicenter of your greatest pain. And God will use you in those places to bring about unbelievable healing in the lives of others. It's true. I've seen this in so many people's lives. I've seen it in my life. That's why I love to mentor and come alongside athletes that are getting ready to play college sports of any kind, because it was during that time of my greatest regret and greatest pain. I find so much fulfillment in how God has called me back now to walk with some of those guys. How about you? What's that part of your story you don't want to tell anyone about, and yet it's your Egypt? God will call you back to that place, and he'll begin to redeem that part of your story if you let him. This is what Moses would have said. He just said, well, because of what I did. The second reason Moses struggled to believe that he was here for a reason is because of this, and I think so many of you are going to relate to this because of what he didn't have. And perhaps there's two groups in the room today that maybe that first one is your thing. You're like, yeah, because of what I've done. The other group in this room, you would say, I'm sure God wants to do something great with my life, but I just am not sure I can get on board with that, at least right now, because of what I just don't have anything. I don't have, I can't stand, I'm not 6'4" like Josh. And every time I speak, it just sounds sexy. I mean, have you guys heard that voice? I mean, he's got a face and a voice for radio. I mean, it's amazing. You're just like, maybe God could do something great if I sounded like him. If I could preach, if I could get up here and sing like this team or play instruments like this. You'd say, because of what I don't have, I'm just not sure. This is verse 11, and this is certainly what Moses was thinking. He's like, what do I have? I'm just a shepherd guy on the run. I don't even own my own flock. I don't have anything. Moses said to God, who am I? That's what he's saying. He's like, I don't have anything. Like, how am I going to be the guy that you're going to use to free the people? I don't have anything. I mean, I've got this flock, but they're not even mine. I don't have it. Who am I? He says. Who am I? God, you've got the wrong guy. God, you've got the wrong gal. And this is so important to see from his story. It's not that Moses felt uninterested. It was that he felt inadequate. He felt inadequate. How many of you this morning, you're interested in this Here to Stay vision? You're interested to make a difference in your family. You're interested to make a difference in the life of your siblings. You're interested to make a difference on your street, in Griffin and beyond. But the truth is, you feel incredibly inadequate. You're like, who am I? I don't have anything. This is chapter 4, verse 10. The next chapter, this is why Moses pleads with God. Oh Lord, I'm not very good with words. I never have been. And I'm not now. I just love how honest this is. I get tongue-tied. My words get all tangled. He's like, how am I going to go back and I'm supposed to speak to Pharaoh? Like, I don't have it. Moses again, verse 13. He again pleaded, Lord, please send someone else. Anyone else. How many of you, this is a lot of what your life sounds like. Your conversations with God. You're aware of the need. And so you keep asking God to send somebody else, anybody else. Well, he's not going to use me. I don't have that ability. I don't have it. This is what Moses was experiencing. And God, he just says, all right, now go. It's as if God wasn't listening. I'll be with you as you speak. I will instruct you in what to say. How many of you are so aware of what you don't have this morning? 2 days ago, I had lunch with a neighbor, and his name is Tony. I call him Neighbor Tony. We're from Chicago. Forget about it. And so me and Neighbor Tony, we had lunch, and we're sitting there, and he just started telling me, and I knew this, but he loves to remind me of all that God has done in his life. And he says the same thing every time. He said, man, God knew that I needed help. God knew that I needed to be saved. He sent a pastor to move across the street from my house. And I love when he retells the story. And when my wife and I were getting ready to plant our church, this is now a number of years ago, 13 years ago, we moved into this house and onto this street. And I just really believe that God sovereignly called us to that community to plant the church. But the church hadn't started yet, and we didn't have a building of any kind. We didn't even have services yet. And yet I was believing that God was speaking to my wife and I, that he wanted us to make a difference. And yet I was so aware of the second point that I don't have anything. God, how am I going to impact my neighbors? There's no church service I can invite them to. Like we don't have anything. I can't invite them to the we don't have services even up and running. And yet when I look back on that situation, I remember God saying, yeah, I know that, but you've got a driveway. You've got a fire pit. You can bring your fire pit from your backyard actually to your driveway where your neighbors can actually see you. You've got chairs. I'm like, yeah, I do. You can put those chairs around that fire pit. You've got matches. You can light that fire pit. You can create the space where a walking neighbor might just pull up a chair where you can make a difference. I was like, well, I guess I'll do that. And I felt like a fool. I mean, who lights a fire in their driveway? Well, this guy does. And I put the fire pit out there in the driveway and put the chairs up, and I sat there all by myself. You want to talk about feeling like a complete loser. Just sit all by yourself around a fire pit in your driveway in a very public setting. And, people are kind of looking. They're like, what's going on? Who is this guy? But I sat there just believing that God's going to do something. I hope. I don't know. And that's when neighbor Tony walked across the street and sat down. And yeah, it wasn't church, but it was church. And he started to share his story, and we began to hang out. We became friends that night. And I remember when he got up, this will make me emotional. It's all right. It happens in my church too all the time. It's fun. After that first fire pit, I remember Tony getting up, and he kind of took a step away to walk across the street, and then he stopped, and he turned around, and he said, "Hey, can we do this again?" And that's what led to Tony coming to faith in Jesus Christ. It wasn't in a building like this. It was in a driveway. And this is what God taught me, that God is not limited by my limitations. What's your limitation? For some of you, you'd say it's your age, and that works on both spectrums. I'm too young. I'm too old. What's your limitation? It's a health challenge. Your heart for people is bigger than your capacity. I understand what that's like. What's your limitation? I'm not good with words, man. I can't get up here, and whoever said you need to get up here? What's your limitation? I just don't have money. I can't. Well, maybe your time and presence would be even more effective than money. What's your limitation? Well, I'm just a student. I'm just a high schooler. Well, have you forgotten that God used high schoolers to start this whole thing? What's your limitation? God is not limited by my limitations. I'm here for a reason. And this is what Moses would go on to experience. That Moses, he was here for a reason. God would go on to use this guy in such extraordinary ways. And God wants to use your life in extraordinary ways too. Here for a reason. I want to close with this story. It's such an incredible story of a church in San Diego. And this church in San Diego, they had been going on for quite some time, and they had out in front of the church a huge statue of Jesus. And yet, one night, vandals climbed up on the statue and broke off the hands of Jesus. And I have a picture of what they did. And so you can kind of see the statue of Jesus here. And the hands and arms were broken off. And so the church leadership gathered together because it was a big deal. And they're like, man, like who does that? And what should we do? And should we just tear the whole statue down and build a new one? And they just kind of were overwhelmed with trying to make a decision on what to do with this situation. So they continued to pray and discuss and pray and discuss and pray and discuss. Like, God, lead us. We don't know what to do about this thing. And it was after some time of prayer and discussion that they made the decision that instead of tearing down that statue and building a new one, they decided instead to put at the very bottom of a statue a plaque that I believe this phrase can impact us in a significant way. The plaque now reads, "I have no hands but yours." 24,000 people in Griffin, Georgia. Only 4,000 of them are finding and following Jesus in a very real and passionate way. Think about the emotional needs in Griffin and beyond. Think about where marriages are at. Think about where high schoolers are at and all the things that they're battling with, college students. Think about all the things with mental health challenges these days. There's hungry people in Griffin. There's hurting people in Griffin. And yet I believe God is saying, I have no hands but yours. That when you get in the car, you realize your family, oh yeah, He's called you to be the hands of Jesus to your family. Tonight, when you'd rather say something unhelpful to your sibling, nope. He's called you to be the hands of Jesus to your sister, to your brother. Tomorrow, when you show up to school or when you show up to work, and you're aware of how you wish you had a different job, and you wish you had a different office, or just a office. Nope. He's saying, I want you to be my very hands to serve your coworkers, your students, those girls, those guys on the team. I have no hands but yours. Here for a reason. Here to stay.